top of the morning, and it is a beaut.
And the hope of the Irish as the future champion of the world.
A podcast is kind of like it's like a radio show that's not on the radio.
Welcome to the Barry J. McDonald podcast. The place where dreams get dusted off and acted on. Because life is too short. We're living on a rock that's flying through space, and hey, what the hell else were you going to do with yourself here?
Hi, this is Barry here, and today I want you to forgive yourself, because this is the greatest thing that you can do for yourself right now. Now, why am I talking about forgiveness? Well, I'll tell you why. I'm sure there are some mistakes right now, some of the things that you have done in the past that maybe you're not proud of, and a lot of us unfortunately find that we are, our own worst enemy. I think I've talked about this before in this podcast, but we can be, the judge, the jury, and we usually give ourselves the stiffest sentence we can give. We just come down on ourselves and you shouldn't did that. How could you do that? You're an idiot. How could you hurt that person? How could you do that thing behind their back or whatever? You're not the only one. I have mistakes in my own past too, some mistakes that I'm not really proud of. And some of us sometimes almost like, when we have a free moment, it's almost like we get out this family kind of photo album and we just go through page after page of all the mistakes we've made in the past, and we relive those mistakes and, we beat ourselves up and say, I should have done it differently. Why did I do that? What was I thinking right then? How could I hurt those people like that? And how could I be so selfish? And sometimes we feel that if we dredge up those mistakes, if we replay them over and over again, that there will come a point when, if we do it enough, we will kind of get some peace, or that we can, erase it, like a magical eraser. We can just kind of wipe it away if we feel sorry enough, or if we come down hard enough on ourselves. If we give ourselves enough of a punishment, well, then we can kind of erase it and that mistake will go away. But those mistakes never go away. They're always there haunting us in the background. They're always reminding us of, probably not the best part of us, or maybe the laziest part of us, or maybe just the selfish part of us, or a part that maybe we're not proud of. And so today I want you to maybe think about forgiving yourself. Well, not actually thinking about forgiving yourself. I think you should actually take a few moments today to actually forgive yourself, to wipe the slate clean, to let all those mistakes go. Now, this is something that I have started doing recently because, again, I've been carrying mistakes for a long time, and one or two mistakes, I couldn't seem to shake off. They were always there at the back of my mind. Now, if you have been listening to the podcast for any length of time, you may have heard me mention in that that list of 50 things on the run up to my 50th birthday. One of the things I talked about was a friend of mine who was diagnosed with cancer, and on the run up to his death, he was asking me to come round to his house and come see him. He wasn't well enough to leave home, and he was basically dying in bed, and he wanted me to come and see him, and I just couldn't get the courage up. I kept saying to myself, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it the next day, I'll do it the next day. And as you can probably imagine, I ran out of time and he passed away, and I didn't get to see him before he died. And I carried that mistake, or that kind of selfish moment, for years. It's still a little bit at the back of my mind. It's not as bad as it was around the time of his death. I was really kind of beating myself up that time, calling myself a coward and calling myself this and that. But I wasn't doing myself any favours. The only person that was punishing was myself. Well, I thought maybe that I needed to be punished for doing that to him, for letting him down and for not showing up. So only this past couple of years, I've kind of, made an adjustment to my thinking when it comes to mistakes. And what I would say to you also, that if you are beating yourself up right now of some of the things you've done in the past, I want you to remember this thing. And that is, you did the best with what you had at the time. Now, you did the best with what you had, with however much life experience you had, however much knowledge you had at the time, and at the time you thought it was the right thing to do. Now, we can look back, in 6 months' time, and a year from now, or 2 years from now, and we can look back at kind of the younger, stupider, more selfish, part of ourselves, and we can look back and we can see all the mistakes we've made. Now, the reason we can look back and see those mistakes is because we have grown as a person, we have more life experience, we have more knowledge, and we can look back and say, you know something, I was lacking this, I was lacking that, and how did I make that mistake? How did I, do that thing? How did I take that action? And it's because at the time, at that very moment when you did take that action, you did the best with what you had. You were thinking, well, this is the way I need to act. With the little life experience you had or the little knowledge you had, you thought it was the right thing to do. A lot of us, in those moments do usually do the right things for ourselves. We're sometimes a little bit selfish, but sometimes, we only have so much information to go on, or somebody says, well, I think you should act this way, or you should do that to this person. And it's only later on that we find out maybe that person who gave us that advice wasn't a person worth listening to, or was bad advice, that maybe if we had asked another few people, we would have found that maybe we might have got better advice. But we stuck with the advice that person gave us because that was where we were there at that moment in time. That's all we knew. That's the only kind of knowledge we had, and so we made that decision. So if you are beating yourself up because of some mistake you made in the past, something you're not proud of, I want you to forgive yourself, and I want you to have kind eyes on yourself, because when you think back to the younger version of you, at the time you thought you were doing the right thing, and for you to criticize yourself right now, you're not doing yourself any favors, because the person you are right now is different than the person you were 6 months ago, or even 3 weeks ago, or even 2 years ago. You're a completely different person. You've got more knowledge, you've got more life experience, and you probably have learned a lot from that mistake. So what I would say to you today is go easy on yourself, forgive yourself, and beating yourself up because of that mistake isn't going to help you. The only one you're actually damaging yourself. Now, sometimes we do want to damage ourselves as some kind of way of punishment, but when should that punishment stop? Even in prison, if someone goes to jail, they might get maybe 20 years, 30 years. But at that point, it's a cut-off point. And society says, something, they have paid long enough for that crime. It's time to let them go. It's let them move on with their lives. So you carrying on this kind of mistake and punishing yourself over and over and over again, it's got to come to an end. It's got to come to a point where you just say to yourself, this is enough. I've punished myself enough for this moment. I need to move on from it. So if you are being hard on yourself right now, I would repeat that thing to you, or repeat it to yourself. I did the best with what I had at the time. I did the best with what knowledge I had at the time. I did the best with what experience I had at the time. I did the best with the advice I got at the time. And I need to let it go, because the person I am right now is completely different from that other person back then. So keep that in mind today. If you're being hard on yourself, just let it go and forgive yourself. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Before you go, Barry wants to show you how you can use the power of stories to sell more of your products and services. He says that if you head on over to the rightcom.com website now, he'll show everything you need to do. Have a great day, and thanks for dropping by.